everyone, Miss Carrie here from Miss Carrie's Creations. I have another Cricut tutorial. We're going to be creating a wood sign using HTV or iron-on vinyl. Let's start by opening up Cricut Design Space so we can design our project. First thing we're going to do is create a template representing those 3 wood slats. So I'm inserting a square shape. I'm going to change the size to 1.5 inches high by 12 inches wide. And then I'm going to duplicate that 3 times. I'm also changing the color to white. I'm going to select all 3 of those images, group them together, and now I have a template to work with that represents the wood slats that I'm going to be adhering this vinyl to. Now I'm going to insert the text. I'm going to click on text over there on the left and type my quote. I wonder how many of you know where this quote comes from. If you do, go ahead and put that in the comments below. I have used the Enter or Return key as I've typed this text to allow me to separate out each of these individual lines. I've chosen a font from fonts that I own. It's called Another Typewriter. And now I'm going to just make each one of those letters a little bit closer by reducing the letter spacing. Because I'm such a visual person, I am going to ungroup this quote to lines. This will allow me to move around each individual line onto those wood slat templates. It will also allow me to work with the individual letters. I can just ungroup to letters, move around each one until I like the spacing and I like the layout. Once I have all of that done, I can start selecting the images for my project. I'm going to be using some images from our new digital collection called Bloom with Grace. This has all kinds of fun fall images. I would like to use a couple of sunflowers, and as you can see, there are 3 different types here. So I'm going to pull them into my design and take a look at each one individually. For right now, I'm going to hide this layout out of the way and take a look at the 2 other pieces. On the cowboy boot, we have 2 little sunflowers, and they have these little crosshatch patterns. I'm not sure how much I want to use that on a home decor piece, but I do like the look of the stitched leaves, so I'm going to keep those. I'm just going to delete everything except the leaves. Now I'm going to take a look at the other sunflower, and I'm not quite sure I like that one either. So I'm going to delete all of the items on this one except for the antlers. I do want to use those antlers in the background. I just love how this Bloom with Grace collection has so many flowers to choose from. Each one of those sunflowers is super cute, but I just need to pick one that will match my design. I'm going to unhide that layout and take another look at those sunflowers, and I really do like how these look. So I'm just deleting all of the images except for the sunflowers and leaves, and then I'm going to start resizing all of the images to fit my project. The layout that I took these sunflowers from is a pre-designed layout. You can cut out all of the images in the colors that you want, just add your photos, and you have a beautiful design for your scrapbook page. This collection is only available with my affiliate link, and I'll put that down in the description below. All right, the design phase of this creation is almost done. I just have a few more colors to change and some things to move around. We're almost to the point where we can cut everything out. But before I do that, I'm going to make my flowers and leaves a little bit larger. Like I said, I'm a visual person. I like to see how this is going to be laid out. But I know once these are folded and fluffed, they will get a little bit smaller in size. So I make them a little bit larger before I start cutting. I also want to create a thicker antler image on my home decor design, so I've duplicated the antlers 3 times until I have 4 images. So now the flowers are ready to cut out, the antlers are ready to cut out. We just need to do one more thing to get our letters ready to cut out. I'm going to hide those wood slat templates out of the way because they are not being cut out, and I'm going to attach my letters. By attaching each one of these lines of text, they are going to cut out of the vinyl exactly as shown here in the project. If they are not attached, Cricut will do a space-saving mode and the letters will end up all wonky on your vinyl and not in the order that you want them. So here I am just grabbing each line of text, clicking attach there in the lower right-hand corner, and we are ready to start cutting on our maker machine. Let's take a look at that black mat that will be holding our iron-on vinyl. It's a little hard to see, but those words are exactly how we have them in the project. Using attach kept those letters in place. I'm just going to add a little bit more space between each one of those lines, and then I'm going to check each mat to see if any of the images need moved. Cricut has what is called material saving mode or paper saving mode, where it will place the items on the mat to save you the most paper. But as you can see, sometimes they do need moved about, and we like to save as much material as possible. So I always like to go in, check each mat, and move the items. Today I'm using my maker to cut out the images, so I'm going to set my base material. This first one is going to be set to cardstock for intricate cuts. Those little flowers are a bit intricate, and so I want to use the proper setting. Once those flowers are cut out, we're going to take a look at our vinyl. Now I realized that I forgot to mirror my vinyl in the previous step. So thank goodness there is that option here in this step. I just have to click edit under the mat, and then I can move the little toggle button to mirror my text. You always want to mirror your text before you cut out any HTV iron-on vinyl. Now, Design Space is user-friendly in the fact that it does give you little reminders. Here it says to make sure that mirror is turned on and the iron-on material is face down or shiny side down. And we can see the mirror's turned on because it says that right under the mat preview. But let's take a look at what it means when they say shiny side down. So here's a piece of HTV. You can see there's a shiny side and a matte side. So when Design Space says make sure the shiny side is down, you're going to be placing that shiny side down onto your standard grip mat. And I like to use a brayer just to make sure that all of the wrinkles are out and nothing's going to snag or catch while I am cutting on my machine. After the vinyl is cut, we're going to weed it or remove the excess vinyl. When it cuts, it does a kiss cut where it does not cut all the way through the backing sheet. You need that backing sheet to stay in place. You don't want your letters or your images to cut out of the backing sheet. You only want the cut to go through that iron-on vinyl. So as you can see here, I am just using my weeding tool to remove all of the excess, and I'm also going to grab a pair of tweezers. Some people like to use tweezers to help them remove all the little bits and pieces between the letters. You can choose to use whatever tool works for you, just as long as you get out all of the excess pieces of vinyl that you don't want ironed onto your project. All right, now that we have all of the pieces removed, I'm just going to cut these lines of text apart and take a look at the heat guide. Now, the heat guide is important whenever you're doing any type of iron-on vinyl. You're going to start out by choosing which easy press you're using. Then you're going to choose the material you're using and the base material that you're using. When you hit apply, it's going to walk you through all of the steps to iron on your vinyl. For wood application, my Easy Press Mini needs to be set at medium. I'll be heating it for 40 seconds with constant movement, firm pressure, and it'll be a warm peel. It's also going to tell me what supplies I need, how I need to prep my material, and it gives me a few steps for application. Here I have 3 wood slats that my husband painted and sanded for me. I'm just using a tack cloth to remove any dust and debris. My Easy Press Mini has been set to medium heat, and I've also placed a piece of paper down onto my Easy Press mat just so that none of the paint ends up transferring to the surface. I'm going to lay down that strip of iron-on text right there onto the wood. I am going to grab some heat-resistant tape to hold it in place. This is normally used with infusible ink, but it works great for projects just like this. The holder that I have my tape in is a washi tape holder. It's not a Cricut product, but I'll put links to everything that I am using on this project in the description below. Here I'm just taking a ruler. I'm going to make sure everything's nice and straight, tape it all in place, and then I'm going to grab an iron-on protective sheet to place on the top and start ironing. Now this protective sheet is just to protect my easy press. I don't want any of the paint transferring onto that iron. Just like the heat guide said, I'm going to do constant movement for 40 seconds. I've sped up here, as you can tell, and then I'm going to set it aside and let it cool just a little bit. The heat guide suggested a warm peel, so I need to let it cool down just a little bit before I peel off the backing sheet. While it's cooling, I can go ahead and work on that second line of text. I'm just going to repeat the exact same process. I'm making sure everything's nice and straight. I'm going to use heat-resistant tape to hold it in place, and then I'm going to place down that iron-on protectant sheet and heat the images for 40 seconds using that Easy Press Mini. Once I'm done heat setting that piece of vinyl, I'm going to set it aside to allow it to cool for a few seconds, and then I'm going to remove the backing sheet from that first piece of wood. At this point, it is still warm to do a warm peel, but it's not hot to the touch. So I'm just going to go ahead and slowly peel back that backing sheet, and you can see all of that HTV iron-on is right there in place on the wood slat. And as you saw, I did remove that heat-resistant tape from the first project because I plan on reusing it on the second project. It's still sticky, it will still work, and I like to save my pennies. On the third slat, I'm going to do exactly what I did on the other two. I'm going to make sure that it's nice and straight. I'm going to hold it in place using that heat-resistant tape, place that iron-on protective sheet on the top, and then heat it for 40 seconds using that Easy Press Mini. While that third wood slat cools, we're going to peel off the backing sheet from the second one. It's still warm to do a warm peel, but it's not hot to the touch, so the backing sheet peels off nice and clean. All right, at this point, the third one is still a little bit warm. I'm going to shut off my Easy Press Mini, and I'm just going to give it a few minutes. As you can see, it's still hot to the touch, and if I peel it at this point, the iron-on has not had a chance to set. Now that I've given it a few seconds, I can peel off the backing sheet, and all three wood slats are complete. As you can see, it looks like I painted them, but in fact, it is iron-on vinyl or HTV. All right, now that all of that iron-on is on the wood slats, we get to decorate them with those Bloom with Grace Cricut cuts we made earlier. This part of the video is going to go pretty quick as I add some inks and shadings to the images. Here I am with some espresso ink, and I am inking the centers of those sunflowers. I'm just going to take a look at the different shades and colors that I want to use, and I'm just using the blending tool to add some depth to the images. After I'm done with the centers, I'm going to grab some Sundance ink and ink the centers of the petals. Now I have used the front and back of Sundance cardstock so that my flowers are both the light color of Sundance and the darker color of Sundance. Once those flowers are all complete, we are going to have some fun. This is a new product that close to my heart is carrying. It is a gloss spray, and I will be using the cheddar color. Now I'm shaking it up really, really well because if you take a look at the bottom of the bottle, there's this little white residue. That just means that I need to mix it a little bit better before I start spraying. Once it's been mixed really, really well, I'm going to grab myself a wet paper towel here, and I'm going to prime this spray onto the wet paper towel. Once I have a nice flow of spray, I'm going to spray all of my images. Now I'm doing all of this down here on the all-purpose mat. You're welcome to place everything down in a box if you're worried about getting spray all over, because this does get a little bit messy. Once I'm done spraying all of my die cuts, I'm going to use that wet paper towel and I'm going to wipe off the nozzle of my spray. Now I'm just going to set these flowers off to the side so they dry while I clean up my mess. The next step is to assemble all of these die cuts that we cut from that Bloom and Grace collection. I'm going to start out by adhering all of the layers of the antlers together. I've created 4 die cuts, and I'm just going to glue each one of them so that I have a nice thick antler image for the front of my sign. While the antlers are drying, I'm going to assemble the sunflowers. As you can see, the ones over there on the right are already done. I just need to glue down these little outline pieces onto the front of the petals. It's hard to see here on camera, but those outlines are glossy. I did use that gloss spray on them, and unfortunately, now they are also stiff and they have changed shape. This is making it a little bit more difficult to get those outlines down onto the petals. So I'm just grabbing my tweezers and reshaping those outlines, getting them down the best that I can on the front of the sunflower. Now that the sunflower pieces are all assembled, I'm going to just use my fingers to shape the petals. And then I've grabbed some 3D foam dots and I am stacking each one of these images right on top of each other. Because this is a home decor piece, I am using a lot more foam tape than I would on a card or a scrapbook page because I want a lot of dimension on these flowers. I'm also using foam tape to adhere the centers of the flowers together. I've just cut a very thin strip of foam tape and adhered it to that grid piece. And then I'm scrunching up that bottom layer before I adhere them together. I decided that I wanted to scrunch that bottom layer just for some texture. I felt that they were a little bit flat, even with the inking. So scrunching them added some nice texture to the bottom of the flower, and it just kind of shows through a tiny bit under that grid. So now the centers are all put together, and again, I'm just using my fingers to shape them, give them a little bit of dimension, and adding a couple layers of foam tape underneath before I adhere them to the top of the flowers. Now I decided that I needed a little bit more on these sunflowers. So I've gone and grabbed my toffee shimmer brush and I'm just going to splatter all of the fronts of the sunflowers. I feel this gives it a nice aged look and it matches the distressing on those wood planks really well. I always like adding little bits of splatter to my projects, so I've decided to continue with the splattering process and start splattering the antlers also. Here I have a black shimmer brush and I'm just adding some blots of ink all across it to give it the nice aged distressed look. And then I'm going to grab these leaves, which I assembled off camera, an evergreen shimmer brush, and I'm going to splatter them with ink also. Now you always want to prime your brush over on the side. Sometimes you might have some excess ink that would blop out and sometimes you don't have enough ink. So it's always best to prime it over off onto the side before you start splattering. All right, now all of our parts and pieces are ready to be assembled onto those wood slats that we made earlier. I'm going to start by gluing each one of those wood slats together. I'm just using Tumbo glue here. It works just fine for this wood project. And then I'm going to grab some jute twine from my stash and wrap it around the end 5 or 6 times. Once I've wrapped it around, I'm just going to tie a little knot on the back to secure it. Before I add all of the embellishments on the front, I'm just going to even out each one of those lines of twine, make sure everything's nice and secure. And now I'm just going to grab my 3D foam tape and start putting everything down onto the front of those wood slats. I'm starting with the antlers. These I'm going to bend up just a little bit. I want them to pop up off the wood planks so that I have a place for the flowers to sit on, which will give it even more dimension than it already has. Here I'm just bending and shaping the points of each one of those antlers, and once that's done, I'll adhere the flowers down. I am going to add 2 or 3 layers of foam tape before I place them down onto the antlers. I really want this to be a multi-dimensional piece, so I'm using quite a bit more foam tape than I normally would. Once all the flowers are in place, we can start adding each of those leaves. How pretty are those copper leaves? I have fallen in love with this copper ore paper this season, and I just love that little bit of copper red popping up behind each of those points on the antlers. Each one of the leaves is being mounted on some foam tape, and it's just being popped behind the flowers and the antlers. I just like the look of all of these individual layers and how well they complement those Sundance sunflowers. Another favorite product of mine this season has been the wooden leaves. I honestly wish Close to My Heart would just make one big package of wooden leaves because I would be using it daily if I could. I love the look of natural wood and use it as often as I can. Now that I've decided on the leaves I want to use on this project, all I have to do is glue them in place. Again, that Tumbo glue works great on any of the wood items. All I have to do is add a little bit to the back, place it where I want using my tweezers, and this project's all done. So I must say this was one of my most favorite projects to make this fall. It was so simple to make using that little Easy Press Mini and the iron-on. All of these letters were created with the iron-on vinyl, and it also went down really well on those wood planks. I also fell in love with these Bloom with Grace sunflowers and Bloom with Grace wood shapes, and I really had fun using that new gloss spray on the sunflowers. All in all, this was just such a fun project. There's so many little bits and pieces I just fell in love with, and I can't wait to place this in my home. I want to thank you for joining me today. I hope that you enjoyed watching how I made this wonderful fall wooden sign, and I hope that you're inspired to make one of your own for your home. There were so many fun techniques we tried today, and I hope that you plan on trying some of them on your projects in the future. New projects and Cricut tutorials are added every week to my blog and YouTube channel. If you enjoyed today's project and wish to see more in the future, make sure you click that subscribe button and notification icon so you're notified when new videos are added. If you wish to see more Cricut tutorials like this one, you can click on the collection icon above. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I can't wait to see what you create.